What's up, podcast family? Welcome back to another conversation with us at the Conscious Kitchen podcast. Today we have the lovely Miss Ali Tate, who is a multi-talented model from California, like us. She cultivated a voice advocating body positivity. In October 2019, Ali was cast as the first plus-size model for Victoria's Secret. She's also created her own plus-size clothing line with the sustainable fashion brand Reformation, which completely sold out. We really love her transparency, humor, and lighthearted spirit she showcases through her Instagram platform, as well as being a badass eco warrior for our planet. Please welcome the lovely Miss Ali Tate.
Yay!
Hi. I didn't know you
Yeah,
guys were from California.
yeah. You
Yep,
gotta
we're over here.
represent
Where are you guys
LA.
from?
Um, I'm from West Covina, which is like 20 minutes away from downtown, and Liz lives in Chinatown now.
Yeah, I live now here in LA in Chinatown. I'm not originally from California, but really California runs through my veins and blood.
Awesome. How cool.
What part of
Yeah.
California are you?
I'm like Bay Area, so Silicon Valley,
Okay,
like
dope.
a small town called Saratoga.
Oh, Saratoga's
Oh,
I
nice.
know. I love Saratoga. Yeah, I'm a Cali girl.
Yeah,
nice.
I know. I just moved to Spain, Madrid, to be with my partner. But I just moved a year ago, but I miss Cali. I'm like such a Cali girl too, man. We had everything.
Yeah,
LA, I mean
yeah,
California, we spoiled. We spoiled.
yeah,
It's true.
totally.
So let's get right into it.
Yes. Yeah, so tell us how are you doing, with everything going on? How's New York? Because now you live in New York and you've been there for how long?
So I've been in New York for 2 years. I moved from London. I was there for 8 years. And currently, I am on week 2 of quarantine.
Mhm.
I'm going a little bit cray cray. I was like totally into staying in last week and, getting my creativity on. But like I
Uh-huh.
woke up yesterday and I was like, this is actually a little bit much now. Like this
Yeah.
is, I think I'm like, I'm ready to go. But the truth of it is we'll probably still be inside for another 2 weeks. So, wrestling with that.
Yeah, I
Yes.
understand. It's since it was more spread out here in Europe, it started in Italy. So we've been in week 3 of quarantine. Um, yeah, so it kind of it influxes of like being super cool and then high fluctuations of anxiety and stuff. But
Hmm.
it's been watching the news here in Europe, it's very transparent and doesn't feel very chaotic at all. It seems like everyone's kind of helping each other. There's a huge population of elderly people here, so everyone's kind of like watching out for the elderly here. But it seems very chill compared to the media and what's going on in the states. It's like very
Mm-hmm.
intense in the states. I feel like,
Yes. Yeah.
even though
It's
we
just
started it
intense
here.
here.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
the American ways are a little bit different. Yeah, it's, people get upset. It's like my right to go outside. I need to be outside, my right to buy guns. I need to do that too. It's
yeah,
all these different crazy things that are happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
But how are the streets of New York? Like, what's it looking like?
They're pretty desolate for how they normally are, but there's still people out. Like,
Yeah.
especially today, it's really sunny. It feels almost warm, and there are like people walking the streets, but there's definitely a weird feeling in the air. It's like a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of tension. I went on a run, and um, everyone, like, when I was going on the run, like, skirted around each other. So we always had like a lot of distance between
That's
us. So it
good.
just
That's
felt
good.
like it felt weird. But
Yeah.
I feel like we're still ticking along, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder like how it's going to be after this, because when are we going to be comfortable to be close to people?
Comfortable.
Like,
Yeah.
is it going to stay like that where we're kind of avoiding people and being close for a while?
I
This
think
might be like,
so.
I feel like this might be like a new norm for a bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
I that's what I think too.
We're all gonna be hypochondriacs for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 So how have you been coping with staying home and just being in quarantine? What have you been doing to stay calm?
Um, well, so I've been trying to use this time to do things that I normally wouldn't have time to do. So
Awesome.
at first it started with getting my bills and all of these things done that I've put off and like things that really needed to get done but didn't have like a timeline on it, where I've like sat down, for hours and did it. Now, after I finished that, I've moved into a more creative space where I'm doing watercolors, I'm writing a fantasy book,
Awesome.
I'm, trying to create like an elven language. Like I'm trying to do things that are
Mhm.
just so not normal for me,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
really hyper creative. Also just finished Tiger King, the documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
It's
What
Laura's
amazing.
the
on
fuck?
that.
I love the
Oh
meme you
my God.
posted. You meme, you're like, if you're not talking about the coronavirus or Tiger King, you are not like human. So yeah, I
It's so
think
true. Like those are the two things going on in the world right now. When I saw Tiger King, I was like, mixed with what's going on in the world with Corona. I was like real life is crazier than fiction. Like you would not even if someone wrote this shit, you would not believe it.
yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I love Tiger King. I recently just found his real Instagram page and I found a selfie of him. You gotta see my stories real quick. It's just like good morning from Madrid. It's like him with a selfie. He's like amazing that character.
Oh
Ah,
man. I
gotta
know.
watch
I
it.
think I'm gonna start watching it this weekend.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna end up binging it.
Liz was working for PETA for 4 years, so I used to always go into her office and watch and go visit her. So it's interesting to see because they have like the hardcore legal attorneys from the show. They're like at PETA, and I was like, Liz used to work there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean
Yeah,
that's a big part.
they really went into the office and they were like, I actually have been to that PETA office as well. And they had a big bone to pick with PETA, didn't they? That like everyone in that documentary.
Oh
Yeah,
man, I mean, yeah, PETA's always so controversial, and especially with people that are animal exploiters. I mean,
oh
100%, they're
yeah,
not on board with anything PETA stands for. And
yeah,
yeah, those roadside zoos and faux sanctuaries are terrible because it's like they're even worse than the other things. 'Cause they're a faux sanctuary. Oh yeah, come, we're taking care of the animals, but then really it's you're exploiting the animals as well. So it's
yeah.
like it's such a bummer. But I think that's how I originally found you, Ali, was through PETA because I used to just track sentiments of different people on the internet and animal rights. And so I think that's how I originally found you. And since then I've just been like, wow, just loving everything you post and all that stuff.
That's
That's
so
so nice to hear.
awesome.
I love
Yeah.
to meet fellow animal advocates
Yeah.
because while they are growing in number, they are still very few. And
Very
I just
few.
yeah, anyone that I meet that's like an animal advocate, I'm like, okay, you're immediately my friend. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
that's what I moved here for to LA. I moved here to work for PETA. So that was
Oh,
like that
that's
was what
so
brought me.
cool.
Yeah, it brought me
Oh,
here and PETA is an organization I'll always stand by. It's you can't agree with everything that somebody does, but they are 100% an organization that does the most for animals that it's
yeah.
it's really it's really great what they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I loved in the documentary the documentary they're like, when we have a bone to pick with someone, we don't stop. Like
Hmm.
like they are like consistent. Like
Yes.
even if like it'll be like 5 years, we'll still be harassing somebody. So that's
Oh
dope.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming
Yep.
and chatting with us today and taking the
Yeah.
time. Tell us
Yeah.
about so you told us how you're coping with everything. Oh, can you tell us a little bit about your fantasy book that you're writing?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I've been a huge fantasy reader my whole life. And it was something that I kind of had to put aside because the more fantasy books that I would read, the harder I found it to come back to reality because I was like, I just want to
Oh,
be in Harry Potter world. I want to be in Artemis Fowl world. Like I would just find it really hard to return back to Earth. But as I've now gotten older, I'm like, wait, there's like this childish imaginary creativity that comes with reading these books, and I want to dive back into that again. And I've read so many fantasy books. I have a Lord of the Rings tattoo on my back, and I was
No
like, you know
way.
awesome.
what, I think it's time that I start kind of diving into my own fantasy world. So I've been world building and I created a map, and I think I'm on like page 30 or 40 of my fantasy book, and I've realized how
Wow.
fucking hard it is to write a fantasy book because you need to
Wow.
create like lore and myth and legends of different races, dwarves, elves, everything. And it's just like so full on, and it's like 8 to 10 hours a day. And I'm
Wow.
taking a little break now, but I'm really enjoying it. I
So
think
awesome.
fantasy is like the best genre ever.
That's so
Wow. And so
awesome.
yeah, that's so cool. I
Did
mean, you
you
even
did
have
you
to create
research how to
scenery.
make it?
Sorry, say it again.
Did you research on how to build the characters and like how to write it?
No, I purposely did not do that because I was like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to take anything other than like the inspiration that I have, and I don't want to draw it. Like, I just want to use what's in my mind. So I just started writing about a girl who I resonated with, who meets this elf who's come into her world from a parallel dimension, and she has to go into his world, and they have to close the door to the dimensions, and it's a journey of evil and courage, and she ends up falling in love with this guy, and he's the hottest fucking guy I've ever read about, and I wrote him, so
That's so awesome. I love this time we're just kind of, digging up our inner child, and that's, I feel like, what's been missing so much. We've all kind of been on autopilot, so this childlike persona is coming back out, which I miss, which is beautiful too.
Yeah, and so this is a practice in self-love then, even, for you writing this, something that you love. It's in a way that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's honoring a different aspect of myself that hasn't been allowed to express itself, hasn't had the time to express itself. So, it's just once again showing that humans are multifaceted and can be many, many different things.
That's awesome.
Very cool. And so tell us about, so since this is kind of a practice in self-love, tell us about your journey to self-love and loving yourself and being okay with all the different facets of your personality.
So, a lot of people ask me this question because I feel like a lot of people see me as like some kind of authority on self-love. And the truth is, people who are on this journey to love themselves better find it's a daily practice, and it gets slightly easier with time. But there are so many days where I wake up and I'm like, not so into myself today. I don't feel super cute today. But that has lessened in like frequency and intensity since I was younger. When I was younger, I played soccer for 15 to 20 years, and I was so hyper fixated on my body, its size. I always felt, I was too fat, and I would come back from these really intense soccer trainings and go on another 5-mile run and like try not to eat food. And this was like, a high schooler who I was so hyper fixated because I was always big boned and I was always bigger than all of the other girls around me. And boys in high school would make fun of me. Like they called me Shrek, or they would just say like, hurtful things like boys in high school do.
Yeah.
And that would really stick with me. And so it was part of my journey in life to overcome these challenges. And this is a really common narrative for women, especially. And, I think it's something around 75 to 80% of women in the world don't like their bodies and feel ashamed about their bodies. So this is a really, really common narrative. And for me, the way that I moved through it was when I started modeling. And I initially had moved to London. I was studying abroad, and I played for a soccer team there. And I entered a curvy modeling competition. It was like looking for, size 12 and up girls. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to enter this. Like, maybe I can win some money. I'm super broke. I'm a student. And I entered it and then ended up getting a contract from it. And I really never thought that was a possibility for me. People used to say, like, maybe, you could model, like, if you lose 40 pounds. People used to say things like that. And I would be like, hey, I never want to model. That's never going to happen for me. And then when I started modeling, I was like, first of all, wow, this is crazy. Never anticipated this. And second of all, I had to look at myself in pictures and familiarize myself with my size, my body. I was looking at all the things that I thought were perceived flaws up close, And the first year was really hard for me because I saw all these pictures and I was like, ugh, I just don't look cute. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I look so much fatter than I thought I did. And all of these like, niggling insecurities that you carry around with you and that becomes the narrative of your life were surfacing. But the more and more I started to model, the more I started to see women who were size 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, who were absolutely beautiful. And because I changed the imagery that I was seeing from, super skinny heroin chic or Kardashian body to a curvier woman, I reprogrammed my mind to see that there were women who were bigger sizes that were, drop dead gorgeous. And so with that like constant bombardment of new imagery, my mind started to shift and I started to see, oh, okay, like I'm kind of cute too. And
Yeah.
that's totally, that belief that I was like less than or had less value started to erode after many years. And I carried around fat phobia with me and the things that come with the culture that we've been indoctrinated into thinking that if you have fat on your body that you are somehow less valuable or less attractive. So those thoughts started to slowly erode, and I became aware of the programming and aware of my trauma and aware, it all starts with becoming aware of it first so that you can then work through it. And now I have more good days than bad days. I have more days where I'm like, okay, I look great. I'm happy. And also the most important thing is realizing that it's not about the way you look. So you have to kind of start at the level of, I love my body, I love myself. And then you transcend to the next step, which is it's actually not about the body and it's not about the way you look. It's about your integrity in the world. Are you living your life's mission? Are you helping your community around you? Are you a good person? And so we kind of have to go through that first step of accepting ourselves to then move to the next step. So that's
For sure.
my experience with the self-love journey.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ali, dropping gems today. Dropping gems, girl. I love that. Yes, thank you so much for that. Because yeah, I mean, it's cool. If you're cute, that's a plus. But I mean, it's really about
Yeah.
your persona, your energy, your service to people. I think that's always like, and how lucky are we to be part of this generation with this conscious awakening? Like, how lucky are we? And women like you and us to be able to break down those things. You know, it's been years. Women have been fucking fighting for years. You know, beautiful.
Decades.
Fucking lucky.
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
Yeah, we're super
Yeah.
lucky. And there's so many different outlets too. Our last episode that we recorded, we had Jackie Ray. She's a art porn director, and her path to directing porn is all about like self-love and finding and being okay with herself. And so it comes out in so many different ways, but you have to like love yourself first and get past that first step, like you said, to really understand and open yourself up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And takes years. It takes years. It's a never
Yeah.
ending chapter of healing, really, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because every day we're still bombarded by the same images. Look this way, ill, that, yes to this, It's like, so it's every day it's still a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you when you kind of went through this revelation and then kind of like how long was it the trajectory between when you actually felt it and you're like I need to change something to now?
Yeah, well, I guess I had since I was probably about 8 to 10 was when I started realizing that I didn't like my body and I didn't like looking in the mirror. And I would, hold my stomach in anytime I went out for the day. And that stayed with me until I was about 23, I would say. So that's a long time of moving through the world, feeling insecure about your body, trying Weight Watchers, trying all these different things.
Everything.
And yeah, everything. Just like I gave everything a try to have that skinny body because then I would magically somehow be of value. And it kind of hung on till it was about 23. And then there was still years of repatterning I had to do. I became aware of it at 23, that I had been conned somehow, that I'd been lied to, and that was the beginning of the reprogramming. And I think for me the heaviest part of it took about 5 years realistically, and I think now I'm kind of on the other side of it and it's not really an issue for me anymore. And so when people ask me how do I release body shame, it's something I get all the time, and I've kind of moved on to other things that are really important to me, other topics that mean a lot to me. But I remember how bad it felt to be in the middle of that body shame. So I always try to help with that message and so we can progress forward as women and as society.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. So in your women's circles, is that part of it? So that type of release that you're talking about?
Yeah, I've run a couple women's circles where specifically we will work on body shame. And women's circles are a great way to facilitate conversation, facilitate trauma release, to have a sense of community. And women's circles are an ancient art that were practiced for thousands of years that disappeared and are coming back now, in mainstream culture. But I think that it's important to facilitate conversations about body shame because a lot of our initial trauma starts there.
Yeah.
So that's an important topic that I speak about, and I use meditation and breath work to help work through those things, which are powerful tools to move through body trauma specifically.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what the topic of some of my women's circles have been.
That's
Oh, very
awesome.
cool.
You
So do
know,
you also
yeah.
host the meditation?
Yeah, so I did my yoga training 3 years ago in Bali. So I'm a certified yoga instructor. So my interest moved from actually doing yoga more into the meditation and breathwork side of it. So I lead the meditation and I will lead the breathwork, and that's where my most powerful shifts in well-being have come from, is those two things. So I really believe firmly in them and adopting them into an everyday practice.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like if you just give the women the tools, they can grow from that. I kind of learned from doing mirror work, just
Mm.
from I've had body dysmorphia for many years, and just looking myself in the mirror every day and being able to look at myself and my reflection, and love the flaws, love the different parts and the scars and everything like that. That's helped me a lot too. So
Yeah.
that's awesome you teach the tools. That's what women
Yeah.
need. We just need the tools. That's all we need, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us about mirror work? What is mirror work?
Mirror working is, being able to sit and look at yourself naked, in the mirror, and being able to, give yourself affirmations of love, fully naked. If you're looking at your stomach or your thighs or your cellulite, and being able to look at those spots and give love, breathe love into these places that you feel insecure. And it really, after I do it, I would sit there for like at least 15 to 10, 20 minutes, and immediately I feel just even a little bit better, like 30 to 40% better about these flaws or scars. I used to have all these huge scars on my knees, and I would just put some love into that, and I'd feel better. So,
Nice.
mirror work helps, meditation works, all these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. There was a question I believe that Laura had where it was, how do you stop yourself from comparing yourself to other models or other people that you know?
You don't stop yourself. It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So I compare myself. That's one of the biggest things that I do that I think is something I need to work on. And it's been a part of my life ever since I can remember, is the constant comparison, even pre-social media.
Right.
So I don't think if that's in you, that's something you stop. I think it's something you observe, and you feel the feelings that come up when you see someone that might be doing something you want to do, or maybe you feel jealous of, or whatever feeling comes up. Just really feel it, and then don't ask that feeling to change. Just sit with it there, fully feel it. And I think the more we do that, the more it kind of dissipates. And then ask yourself, where is that coming from? What area of my life needs to be worked on, that it feels like it's missing after I look at this person's photo, or after I see this person doing something I want to do? What is missing, and how can I implement that into my life? But I don't think that I've ever managed to stop comparing myself entirely. The only way I've managed to do that is to not look at social media, which is definitely a method, but I just feel that that's impractical, because a lot of our world is addicted to social media, and you don't just tell them, it'd be great to stop looking. You have to learn how to work with this new tool, this new technology in a responsible way, with good phone hygiene. And comparison is inevitably something that will come up after we look at
Right.
social media. So I have not learned the technique of not comparing myself to someone else. I've just learned to live with it in a more manageable way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's good advice. You can't avoid things because then in avoidance you're not really healing.
Yeah,
You're just putting it away in a storage until it'll find its other ugly way to come, the comparisons.
totally.
To
Yeah,
resurface.
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, comparison's really hard, right? Especially in our generation. But I think as we get older, we just use these same tools. Yeah. Um, okay, so I asked one girl, Jamie, asked on social media. She said, "Ali, can you give us some tips on being patient with others when trying to break down diet culture?"
Mm, that's a good one. Okay, so that's a huge lesson of my year this year is being patient with others. And the key to this is, for me personally, is to be non-judgmental. So what we need to understand is that everyone is in this body and has come to this earth with lessons that they've needed to learn on their own time. And for us to, I have the same issue when I talk to people about veganism. I don't think that we should be eating and consuming animals the way we have been. And I've been talking about this for 10 years. But the key of it is I used to get frustrated and I used to be like, judge people because they did something that was different for me. The key is not to judge people. It's to accept that that's where they are right now, because we were there once too. And we evolve and we change and we're dynamic and we do it at our own pace and we do it at the exact right moment for our soul's development and our soul's journey. So to be patient and not judgmental of people because that's where they are right now is so key to the human experience. And it's so key to being compassionate and to really being like, I see cancel culture all the time on Instagram, and I get frustrated with it because, people say stupid shit all the time, but we do too. We are all at different understandings,
Yeah.
and we have had experiences that have led us to believe what we believe, whether that's right or wrong, or if that's right or wrong determined by the public. So we need to be patient with people while they elevate and while they come to understand these lessons for themselves. Us screaming at someone and being like, you need to understand diet culture is bad and this is why it's bad. That's not going to get our end goal. And our end goal is to have everyone become more understanding and more conscious about the things going on in the world. So if our end goal is that, what's the best method to get someone to realize that? It's not going to be through judging them. It's not going to be through being impatient with them or yelling at them or canceling them. Those are not effective ways to get people to come around to our way of thinking. So it takes love, empathy, compassion, and practicing what you preach. So instead of just walking the walk, do the thing and allow others to see how you're doing that and living your life in a happy and healthy way. And people will come around and they'll be like, she looks really happy at her size. Like, I'm going to find out what she did to get over diet culture or why diet culture might be bad. So the first is to be empathetic and compassionate about where we all are in our journey and think about the end goal, which is to elevate consciousness and what is the best way to get there. And the second thing I would say is diet culture is something that we've all been programmed for so long to think is normal and okay. We need to give people a hot second to deprogram that, because that has been with us for, I mean, I don't, hundreds of years.
Yeah,
For
hundreds of
sure.
years.
For forever.
1940s, I think.
Yeah, right. I mean, the
Diet
1940s is
pills.
what came to me, but I probably even before that, I know before that for hundreds of years, women were thought to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to be a certain way. That's all part of diet culture, is the expectations on what women should be and how they show up in the world. So we need to be patient with people while they reprogram their minds. This isn't an overnight thing. You don't just wake up the next day and you're like, oh, diet culture is a way to control women and is part of the patriarchy. That comes with deep understandings and new levels of experiences that allow you to see and peer behind the curtain and go, oh, like that shit's been going on. Like, I need to look into this. And it does take time. So the way we can help our sisters is to be patient with each other.
Yeah. Be patient and don't force people if they're not at your level of perception and realistically, you know. Everyone has a different level of perception and history, you know.
Yeah. I think leading by example is always the way to just show people that there's no judgment and, you know, you just live your life and people will on their own be interested. You know, once they see like, wow, this person is really happy. Like you said, it's like, how did they get there? And then they start asking their own questions. And once somebody starts asking you questions, it's like you just open Pandora's box because you know they're curious, you know that they're open, and then you just take it from there in non-judgmental ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's they said in our generation there's different levels of ascension. You know, there's going to be the first wave, the second wave of ascension, and the third wave, you know, of ascension of consciousness, whether it be for the planet, and then another ascension of eating and, you know, the farm cultivation of animals and the horrible way they treat animals. It's different waves. So I think that this moment we're in is just one huge wave for another big wave to come. So we also have to be patient with everyone's consciousness for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And even the kids now, I mean, do you see like these high schoolers are amazing. Like these kids, like these teenagers they're unreal. They're hosting amazing protests and they're standing up for things and they're just so aware. So it's like if they're already there, I can't even imagine like the next generation of children that are going to be born into just a more loving society.
I think so.
Yeah, those different waves.
Yeah, we gotta fight for it for sure. Gotta fight for it.
Yeah. And so you talked a little bit about your life as a vegan. Are you vegan, vegetarian, or can you tell us a little bit about your lifestyle?
Yeah, I'm primarily plant-based. I was vegetarian. I became vegetarian 10 years ago. I was 19, yeah, so 10 years ago. And over the course of a vegetarian's life, you know, you start to realize that eating dairy is probably just as bad as the eating meat part. It's just something that it's a hard one to pull away from because a lot of the times when I travel a lot, so when I'm traveling, if you don't eat gluten, eggs or cheese and you're vegetarian, you're screwed. Like there's nothing, like especially when you go to certain parts of Europe or if you go to, you know, different parts in the world, like there isn't much of a vegan offering. Whenever I can eat vegan, I do. At my home, we don't have anything that's animal byproduct in it. But you know, if I'm out on the road and I need to eat something, like I'll probably end up having an egg or something. But for the most part, my diet is, you know, 100% plant-based. I don't find it challenging at all. And it's something that has evolved with me over time. And the more and more, when I first started becoming vegetarian, I think Food Inc. was the movie I saw. And I just watched it. It's a great one. Yeah. And it's a great like entry level one because it's about how our food is produced and the quality of it. And so it's not so like in your face as Earthlings or Cowspiracy. But but I saw it and the next day I was a Division I soccer player and, you know, everyone ate meat. And the next day I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm not eating this anymore. I just saw how that meat just like came to me and I'm not doing this anymore. And everyone thought I was a bit of a nut at first, including my parents who owned and operated a fondue restaurant, which sold cheese and meat, but that was their main thing.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was like a big shift for me. But then about 2 to 3 years later, my dad got cancer, prostate cancer and diabetes in the same month.
Oh, wow.
And he was told, you know, that's it from a couple different doctors he had seen.
Oh, wow.
He, alongside another kind of special treatment he chose, he juice fasted for 3 months. So he just did veggies, no fruit, and he just used that as on the side of doing another treatment. And at the end of the year, his cancer was gone, his diabetes was gone, and they adopted a vegan diet right after they finished this, both my mom and dad. Amazing. They sold their restaurant. They moved to Arizona, where they lived in a community called the Tree of Life, which is a vegan Kabbalah community, and they've been vegan for 7 years now.
Wow.
And my brother's vegan. He owned a vegan restaurant in Bali. So I'm lucky to have a community and my family around me who all are on the same page. But it's something that we all feel very strongly about because, and I'll tell you the main reason why. It was after reading a book called The World Peace Diet by Dr. Will Tuttle, who is a vegan animal rights activist. and he's a professor as well. And I read this book, and it was so clear to me the comparisons he was drawing about the choices of what you put on your plate every day, either enhance world peace or pull away from it and lead to more violence. And when we choose to kill animals to eat their excretions and their skin and their body, we are voting for a violent world, and we are normalizing violence. So that was one of the big things that came for me. I thought if everyone could adopt a plant-based diet, we would look at the value of life differently, and we would look at the way that we move in the world differently, because we're going to be less inclined to be violent. Right. The second reason that I thought it was so important was because there's that old, like, I think it's like, a really cliche expression, is like, you are what you eat, right? And if you're eating on a regular basis the body of an animal who was super stressed out before it got killed, so you're ingesting all of those stress hormones, you're taking in the fear of that animal that was killed, because it knew it was going to die. They know, they're not stupid. They know they can hear screams, they can smell blood. So you're taking in the energy of that animal, and you're taking in the energy of death into your body. And we don't want to create an energy of death in our body. We want to create an energy of life. And that means to take in high vibrational foods like plants, and not to mention all of the research that has come out in the last 15 years about how animal protein has led to an increase in several diseases and several cancers. The China study is a great book for that. Yeah. Omnivore's Dilemma. So there's so much research that has been going into a plant-based diet being the best for longevity, but also it's the best for the world. We can't justify cutting down forests anymore to create fields for cows to suffer in and die violent, horrible, bloody deaths when they're essentially babies. So all of these things are cold, hard facts that we need to take a good look at ourselves, and we need to, I mean, karmically, there's some serious shit that I think is going to go down from the way we've been treating animals for so long. I don't think that we're just going to get away with it scotch-free. And it's no surprise that most of the viruses have been caused from the animal and wildlife trade, right? Yeah. So nature has a way of recalibrating and being like, this ain't working. Like, global warming is in response to our activity from living out of balance with the earth. Viruses are another response to Earth being like, you're on the wrong track here. So we need to take a good hard fucking look at ourselves and reason with ourselves and be like, why are we justifying this violence against animals? How is this acceptable? How is this going to affect our future generations? And what can we do right now, personally, individually, without, going through years and years of corporate change or federal changes? What can I do right now, every day, that will contribute to a better world? And that's choosing a vegan diet without a shadow of a doubt. I'm so clear about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even along with the animals, how are we okay with inducing this injustice on other humans? Because the people that are working in the slaughterhouses, they don't want to be there. It's undocumented workers. They're being taken advantage of. It's a human rights issue as well, So for some people, sometimes you can't get them to see the animal side, and then it's like, but what about the humans? What about the people that are working in there and the psychological things that are occurring to them because of this? We're hurting our own brothers and sisters in these slaughterhouses as well. They don't want to be there.
One of the Filipino guys who helped me they assist me sometimes, like, cleaning my property flat, and I was like, where did you come from? He's like, I was in Poland. And I was like, what were you doing there? And he was like, I was slaughtering pigs and like deboning the pigs and stuff. And I was like, how many pigs did you have to like debone a day? He's like about 80 to like 200 pigs a day. Like, I would have to debone them, and he's like, I didn't get paid. Like, I didn't get paid anything. He's like, it was long hours, and he's like, I had to leave. So he like fled Poland to come to Madrid for a different type of change. And so, these are the undocumented Filipino workers. It's it's horrible.
It's all around the world, and I mean that causes a lot of it's terror, humans we're not meant to be killers like that at that scale, and these companies give them rates of, you have to kill 200 chickens a day, and it's like, and if they don't meet that quota, And it's just, yeah, it's just so terrible all around,
Yeah,
really.
I think about that too, about the cost on the humans that are working at these places, their psychological trauma that's going to be coming, and that they're moving through the world with bags of violent trauma that are then going to affect other people. And the other thing is, when you think about, like there was an experiment, I think it was called like the Tadashi experiment, something like that, where basically it was an experiment that had random numbers being generated across the world. And before times of extreme events in human history, the numbers would synchronize, which suggested that there was a consciousness that was felt around the world, and our energy could affect other people's energy. So thought forms were a real thing. I know I sound super hippie right now.
Girl, bring it on. I've started a podcast on Conscious Kitchen, girl. Come on.
Okay, cool.
Bring it on.
So this experiment was out there to show that we are giant bags of energy fields who are affecting and interacting with other energy fields. So when you think about a slaughterhouse and the giant amount of violence, suffering, fear, pain that is coming out of these places, those places are like dark energy vortexes that go on to spread and infiltrate through to other areas. And I don't think that, like animals have some kind of like no energy because they're lower sentient beings. They're souls. So they have an output, they have an energy field. And so I really think that there's such a thing as like energy pollution, where there's a giant amount of death and violence occurring at a location that goes on to affect other places. And we need to clean that up for everyone to be able to see more clearly, think more clearly. So for me, there's so many reasons why we need to stop eating animals. And now a lot of people, I always get the same questions. Where do you get your protein? I'm not even going to answer that anymore. I've gotten that like 1,000 times. I'm so done with that.
Yeah.
Like, research it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's all, that information is all out there for you to research. And the other one is, well, if we don't eat cows, then they will die because they'll become extinct, because the only reason they're around right now is because we eat them. And my answer to that is, first of all, we bred cows to be domesticated, to live in our environments that we put on them. And what's better? Put yourself in a cow's shoes. Would you prefer to be maybe less in number and living in a place where you have freedom and you won't come to a bloody end? Or would you prefer to be crammed in tight quarters, separated from your babies, raped, force-fed, and then killed to say thank you at the end of a very short life? What would you prefer? Like, it's such an easy answer for me. Like, that is not a correct existence for any animal, any sentient being, any human, anybody. So that just needs to come to an end.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's this really good book that I read. I think, is it by Melanie Joy? I can't remember the author, but it's like why we eat pigs, wear cows, and something else. But that goes into a lot of like the psychology behind some of the people that work, and just all these different things on how we think. Because it's about, when you eat a burger, you're eating a burger. But it's called a burger. How come it's not just called eating a cow? It's because that's what it is. But that word, that disassociation, is what makes it easy for us to be like, oh yeah, I'm eating, oh so cute, this cow, while you eat a burger. It's like that disassociation. So it's almost like we were even like programmed that way to be dissociative of what it really is. So it's such a good the rise of veganism in the last 6 years, like having been like really watching this so closely, because when I went to work for PETA 7 years ago, it was just when Instagram was on the rise, and so was veganism. And now it's just like on such a high rise, and the world is finally waking up, and people are, if they're not vegan, they're flexitarian or vegan one day a week. And that's fine, because it's like everything matters, and everything makes, even just one day a week makes a difference, and eventually you work towards, being happy with your weekly schedule, but any little bit helps. And I think it's always good to encourage someone, even if you can't go full vegan, just do it during the weekdays or on the weekends or for dinner or however, just try it and just try to make some sort of impact.
Totally.
Every little counts.
Every little vote counts for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So does the way that you look at the world affect the jobs that you take on? Can you tell us a little bit about
Mm.
that?
Yeah, definitely. And oh, we're in such a strange time right now because like I as a model don't have jobs on the horizon, period. Like I need to be there in physical in person and I don't have jobs. And I'm like, okay, where's my next check coming in? How am I gonna
Mm,
like do this? And I'm being approached by brands to do social media posts for them or whatever
mm,
it is. And I'm not really in the position to say no to money, but I have to some of these people because ethically it is against everything I believe in. So I'm constantly put in a really tricky position of being, working as a model and deciding what brands make the cut for me ethically, because not most brands. I don't know any brand that's perfect. I don't know any clothing
mm-hmm.
brand that has it down
Right.
perfectly. They all have
Right.
something that could be improved upon. So it's really for me saying yes to jobs with companies who are willing to take steps forward. So
Mm-hmm.
if like H&M, horrible, practices with their workers and their clothes are fast fashion and they're high polluters, but if they're willing to now create an ethical line and we want to show them with our vote, with our money, that that's what we want, it's best to reward brands by showing them this is something we want more of. And so, yes, it's not, the most ethical company, but can we vote with our dollar and be like, I like that you're doing this? Because look, no one's perfect. No corporation's perfect. No one's perfect, but we can ask them to change. And if they do, we need to support them on that. So I try to find, work with brands who I think are as close to perfect as it's going to get, as long as you're consuming new things, right? Because at the heart of the environmental crisis is overconsumption. That's
Right.
undoubtable. So the best thing we could all do is just stop buying shit. But that's not going
Mm-hmm.
to happen. It's not realistic. So
Right.
what brands are doing it near perfectly, and that there's a few brands out there, and I try to advocate for those brands. But then usually when you find a really sustainable brand, they're not size diverse. They don't go up to
Mm-hmm.
certain sizes.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's hard to find brands, but hopefully what I'm hoping is me being out here talking about this and being a voice for this encourages more brands to do all of these things, to check all of those boxes, to be size
Right.
diverse, body positive, make their clothes more sustainably, more ethically, use vegan leathers that aren't PVC or PU,
Mm-hmm.
and to start changing some of their practices. So that's all I can hope for. And I know it's not going to be perfect. And, people might criticize me if I decide to work with a certain company or a certain brand, but just know that I'm constantly thinking about it and constantly being like, is this person trying to be better or are they trying to stay the same?
Yeah. And do you have an agent? Do they ever encourage you to just do it anyway, or are you pretty much able to say no, I don't want to do that?
I have an agent, but I'm so opinionated. It's like I get bored of myself. I have so many freaking beliefs and outspoken opinions, but I don't know how to change it. That's just who I am. I was
Yeah.
saying to someone I got my birth chart done and all of my signs were like in the first house, which just means that we're just like a little bit fiery, a little bit like,
What's your sign?
outspoken, have these opinions. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I always am able to tell my agent what I don't want to do and
Oh,
what I'm
that's
not
good.
comfortable with. I have turned down multiple jobs that were big money jobs because I didn't believe in what they were doing, like leather
Mhm.
companies or fur companies. I just won't do it.
Yeah.
It's not something that I would ever feel comfortable with myself.
Yeah, for sure. So is that how did the collaboration with Reformation come about? Because they are a brand that didn't have all-inclusive sizing. Tell us about like how that
Mhm.
came about and how it went.
So I think that I remember about a year before I started working with them, I remember just being like, this brand's awesome. I'm obsessed with everything they're doing. And I think I wrote them an email and was like, look, like if you want to send me some clothes, like I'll post, I'll do all these things. Like I love your stuff. I love what you're doing. And then before I knew, I think like it was like, about a year later, they booked me as a model. And then after that, they were like, cool, we'd love to do a collaboration with you, to do this plus size clothing line. And I was so down, and stoked to work with a company that big. And, again, no company has it perfect down pat,
Yeah.
but Reformation
Yeah.
gets pretty close. So,
Hmm.
and pretty close while still being trendy and wearable.
Yeah.
So it
That's
was something I
awesome.
was really excited to do.
Yeah, I really like the images that came out. It was all super super Southern California, which is dope.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And so are they
then
now, do they
also,
now have, oh, go ahead, Laura.
oh no, go ahead, Liz. I was gonna ask about Victoria's Secret.
Oh, are they all, is now Reformation, do they always carry plus sizes now? Or was that
Yeah,
just that
they have
one
like a
that,
permanent, I think they have a permanent range of extended sizing now. They don't offer all of their clothes in extended sizing, but they do have extended sizing on a permanent basis, which is a good
that's
thing.
good.
And
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, what is the
yeah.
percentage of American women over the size, what, 12 or something? It's like a huge percentage. They should have more offerings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the average size of women in the US is a US size 14.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's like they should have more options.
for sure. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and so how did like Victoria's Secret in October? That's freaking huge. First plus size model.
Yeah, that was crazy shit. I honestly did not know that, like, when I took the job, I didn't see Victoria's Secret on the job description. I must have just read it really quickly. It just showed up, thought it was another day at work.
Uh-huh.
And then a couple weeks later, they're like, "Hey, Victoria's Secret wants you for their press day in their headquarters in New York." And I was like, "What?
Wow.
Why?" And they were like, "Well, you just did that shoot for them." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Like, what? I just did a shoot for Victoria's Secret." And they were like, "Yeah, look at your job description." And it said VS. And in my mind, it was
Oh,
like versus. Like, I thought, I don't know what I thought.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
wasn't thinking. And then when I found out it was for Victoria's Secret, I was like, okay, that's super random. Sure. Like, I'll come to the press day. And it was just mind boggling to see, giant photos of me in this headquarters of Victoria's Secret. I was like, what the fuck is
What?
happening?
Wow.
So
And
you
then
had
it
no
kind of
idea
blew
the
up.
photos. You had no
No,
idea the
I had
photos were going to
no
be,
idea.
And this was
wow.
during the rebranding, right? Like the rebranding, or no?
Yeah,
Was this
so they're doing more collaborations now with different brands. So they are, working with For Love and Lemons and Blue
yeah.
Bella, different lingerie brands, and I was in the collaboration with Blue Bella. And it just got a lot of press attention, and there were so many articles written about it. I was super overwhelmed. And it was one of those things where I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm comfortable with like how many people are looking at me right now. Like, this is
Wow.
scary.
So
Um,
would you like make that as like a marker for like, okay, this is one of the I made it situations.
I guess like looking
Yeah.
back on it,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I could, in 10 years, when I look back at my modeling career and I'm doing something totally different, I'm like, oh, that was cool. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
But, I guess I just thought of it as another job, really.
Yeah. But that's awesome because so many amazing things were, occurring that you just kept getting awesome jobs and all these things that it's kind of, I don't know, I had that in my career too. I kind of had all these amazing opportunities happen with my brand, and then years later that's when I kind of reflected on it. I was like, damn, that was pretty iconic. Like, but
Hmm.
it takes a while to like look back on it. So, but yeah, congratulations, girl. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so cool. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. So, yeah, so I think the last thing we wanted to chat with you about was the Love You Give podcast. Can you tell us about your podcast that you host?
Yes, it's my little baby. I love it. I love doing it. I went to a sacred plants retreat about, must have been, yeah, 2 summers ago. And I was sitting down meditating with this flower, this plant outside, and I just was having like a conversation with it. That was the exercise we were instructed to do. And I asked the flower, what's the next thing that I should do? Like, what should I do for my mission in life? Like, how do I like live more in alignment with what I was put here to do on earth? And it came so clearly, start a podcast. And I was like, it like was like weird. Like, it came like as actual tangible words in my head.
Wow, like
And
a
so I was like,
ding.
all right, yeah. And so I just went home and I bought the equipment and I was like, hey, I'm gonna start this podcast. And my main passion has always been mystical, spiritual, self-help, mental health. And so I knew that my podcast was going to have very little to do with fashion and mostly to do with what I'm passionate about, what I want to talk about nonstop. And so it started off as like a self-help kind of podcast. And now we have 45 episodes and I edit everything myself, I record it myself, I set
Wow.
it up myself. And I get these amazing guests on who I'm just so, every time we finish talking, I'm just like, wow, that like totally opened a new door for me, like to think about. And it's really just like soul food for me. And I'm like just stoked if anyone listens to it and gets something from it, because it's been healing for me and exciting for me. And I've met new friends from it, and people who are, you know, contacts now and in the more wellness space, which is something I love. And so it's been a really beautiful unfolding of this podcast. And I guess my hopes for it are that it can continue to grow and to actually help, you know, people all over the world to see life from a new lens, maybe a more spiritual lens, and to help them somehow if they're in a spot of suffering. And that's my ultimate goal for the podcast.
That's awesome.
So cool.
Yeah. I mean, we feel that already with you, with having this conversation with you. I think that, you know, yeah, the podcast realm is like, yeah, you just get goosebumps every time. It's like soul food.
Yeah,
food.
always.
Never,
After,
it's the
yeah.
love that keeps on giving, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love it. I love it. Podcasts helped me so much when I was having a hard time 3-4 years ago. And I started listening to podcasts I had never before, and changed my life. And it made me wake up every day with a renewed sense of purpose and feel inspired and feel like a sense of community, because other people were having the same issues I was having. And so it's saved my life in some ways. And so I knew that that was something that I could reach a lot of people and help them with. And I hope people listening to this podcast feel like feel something and feel warm inside and feel like comforted and feel like, you know, elevated in some way, because that's how I felt when I listened to podcasts.
Yes, oh, so amazing. Yeah, I think that that's always our goal with the Conscious Kitchen as well. It's we get to have these types of conversations because we're in cities that have so many diverse personalities. But in other countries and other states, people aren't able to have these types of discussions and aren't able to have like these mind expanding topics be implanted in their minds. And so through podcasting, we're really able to just spread the word and just put it out there. And hopefully someone will find a story that they're connected to and be like, oh, wait, somebody's going through the same thing as me. Like, damn, I'm really not alone, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I moved here to Madrid, I feel like I haven't found my community yet of, you know, like-minded individuals. It's going to be about a year and a half now, and I'm still struggling with it, but I think I'm meeting some people here and there, but I do miss that about this, like big cities like New York and LA, you know? So
yeah,
you got to be
well,
thankful.
I know how you feel because I was in London for 8 years and I had struggled a lot to find a like-minded community. And I did not, like, I'm such a girl's girl. Like, girls are my people, my best friends, you know, my close knit, you know, those are my people. And I've struggled to find them in London, and I felt really lonely and I was ready to leave. And I guess, like, you know, that's a normal thing when you're moving to a new culture, a new country. And like you can find your people when you listen through podcasts and, you know, find new connections and just know you're not alone, because I've totally been there. So I understand.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. So cool. So what are some, before we wrap it up, what are some podcasts that also inspire you? So your own podcast, The Love You Give, and that's on Apple to listen to. And then any other ones you listen to?
Yeah, I love This American Life still, because I love their stories of journalism, how much research they do into unique stories of people who I wouldn't have heard from normally. I love true crime stuff. I mean, when I first got into podcasts, I was like Dirty John and Serial.
Those are the most listened to podcast. Is just the murder mysteries. It's like the number one rated.
That I feel like that's what put podcasting on like the map, was those murder mystery ones.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then I love Russell Brand's podcast. I think Russell Brand's a really cool dude, and I every time he talks, he's these great guests on, and I'm just like, you know, he's wacky and his mind runs really quickly, but I don't know, I just think he has a lot of cool things and a cool approach to the way he looks at the world. I loved this show that they've since discontinued, but I'll listen to reruns. It's called Dear Sugar. It was with Cheryl Strayed, who wrote Wild. And it's with her and another therapists, and they get letters in from people and like relationship problems or whatever issues they're having, and they help them work through it on air. And it was just such a beautiful show for me to listen to. It really helped me in a tight spot in my life. So those are some of my favorites.
Nice.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, thanks, babe. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Also, would you give any tips or advice for young women that are trying to, I guess, come into their own as like even trying to become a model or anything like that in the industry, especially living in New York?
Yeah. If you're trying to become a model, I really would advise strongly that you stop and think about what it is if you really want to become a model. Like if you're up for the whole modeling experience, warts and all, because if you're in for it just for the glamour and the makeup and the clothing, like that's only a small percentage of what modeling actually is.
Yeah.
A lot of it's really hard work, constant judgment. People are going to be looking intensely at your face and body all the time and might find issues with it. That's very hard to take, and it takes a lot of mental fortitude.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle. A lot of models don't work. Like you only hear about the really successful supermodels, which are like 1% of the models in the whole
Naomis.
modeling industry. Yeah, the Naomis, the Kendalls, the Gigi's, like those are like that's a crazy success story. And most girls work 1 or 2 days a month and maybe worry about where the next check is coming in. So it is an industry with a lot of judgment and criticism, and so just be aware of that. If you still want to get into it knowing all of that, then I would recommend you submit Polaroids of yourself to agencies and see if you get any feedback. And also an Instagram following really helps these days. I've seen a lot of girls who've been discovered just through Instagram alone. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Alrighty, you heard it from Miss Ali Tate, and you guys could follow her at Ali Tate on Instagram. Is it on Instagram?
Yes, it's on Instagram. Yeah.
And then her podcast is The Love You Give.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ali, for coming into our podcast today. We appreciate your time and your amazing, loving words, and we just wish you all the best and keep for everyone to stay strong during this crazy quarantine and pandemic. We're all going to get through this, and we're all going to get through this stronger and wiser and more aware, I think.
Yes.
Amen. And thank you so much for having me on. You guys are lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, everyone stay safe and stay sane out there.
Yes.
Don't go cray.
Yes. And so catch us on the next episode of The Conscious Kitchen. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.